He's watching Dad. Dad's going to the kitchen, and I chop liver. You go to the kitchen, and the other person becomes nothing. He thinks you're getting food, and that's what motivates him the most. So I'm waiting to see if my sister comes in on YouTube. She should be coming. I did go live a little bit early. It is hot today. This week it's supposed to be in the 80s. So, and I have to work this weekend. No fun. But it is what it is. Now he's hungry. So you can see I have Jack Skeleton, my nephew, and I got the same one.
Don't forget him on Saturday.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and get started. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I'm Sandra, and I'm an alcoholic. Please do not be judging each other in the comments. It is a meeting, an actual meeting. We're all here for a purpose of getting sober and learning how we can achieve lasting sobriety. So just refrain from judgment and harassing others. And let's get with the step. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defective characters. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continue to take personal inventory and when wrong, promptly admit it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Hi, Lily. Thank you for letting me know you can hear me and see me. I was sitting here going blind. So we are reading the big book. Mine is the 4th edition. And I always put in the description what I'm reading, the page number, the title, all of that. So because I'm in the 4th edition, you might be in a different edition. So go off the story name. And it is On the Move. On page 486. Working the AA program showed this alcoholic how to get from geographic to gratitude. I thought my life had come to an end when I arrived at my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous at 28 years old. I had been drinking since my early teens, and to my way of thinking, booze had been the answer to my problems, not the problem itself. Even I had to admit, though, that my life had gotten pretty bad and my options were quickly running out. In a moment of desperation, I agreed to go to one AA meeting. It is easier to see now as I look back on my drinking days that from the very beginning, alcohol had been a part of nearly every disaster in my life. As a very young boy, perhaps 10 or 11 years old, I had begun to steal drinks when my parents were not looking, or my friends and I would convince someone from the local high school to buy us some beer. Slowly but very steadily, my problems began to grow from there. It started with a simple episode at school, but buddies and I would split a six-pack over lunch and thought nobody would notice. It never occurred to me that a 13-year-old could not easily hide the effects of even a single beer. By the time I was 14 or 15, things were getting far more serious, and the consequences of my drinking were getting more costly in every way, socially, morally, and financially. A turning point came when I was 15. My mom was in the middle of an ugly divorce. Through nobody's fault but my own, I decided that I had the answer in a drunken brawl, having planned every step of my action. I attempted to off my stepfather. I vaguely remember being dragged out of the house by the police and came to, yet again trying to answer for what I had done while drunk. The results were that I was eventually given a choice by the judge: go to juvenile hall until I was 25 years old, or leave the state until I was at least 21. I did not want to go to juvenile hall, so I did the math and decided that better part of valor was to get as far away from there as I could. Over the next 15 years, until I graced the doors of AA for the first time, life really never got any better. I did, however, learn the fine art of geographics. From my home on the East Coast, I landed in Japan. Then I moved back to the United States and to New England, then out to California, where over the next 6 years, I saw my alcoholism take me to new depths of disgrace, embarrassment, and despair. As one of my early AA sponsors used to say, I don't hang out with lower companions. I had become one. The specifics are pretty much the same as for most alcoholics. I went places I used to swear I would never go. I did things I could not imagine myself doing. I hung out with people that at one time I would cross the street to avoid. There came a time when, looking into the mirror, I honestly did not know just who was looking back at me. To say that I had arrived at a jumping off point is an understatement. Life just could not go on like this much longer. I began the process of speeding up the day when life would end. My doctor had 6 or 7 suicide attempts on my medical record. Most were pitiful efforts to reach out for help, although I didn't see it at the time. My last such attempt was very public and demonstrated that I had lost touch with reality and with any sense of what my actions could do to others. AA took pity on me, I think, and invited me to his home for Thanksgiving. His parents were in town from the East Coast, and he was having a big party. There at the dinner table, I stood up and attempted suicide in front of everyone. The memory of that has always stuck in my mind as the definition of pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization that the big book talks about. What is sadder is that my actions had made sense to me at the time. Okay, Lily. As a result of that episode, I ended up seeing a psychiatrist to find out what was wrong with me. At our very first session, she invited me to tell me about yourself. I proceeded to do so, only to be told to stop after I had only spoken for 5 minutes or so. She explained that she really only had 2 things to say to me, that she thought I had told the truth since I walked into the office, and that I was an alcoholic. It took me a long time to understand how a description of my life could make anyone think I was a drunk. The doctor said that if I was going to continue to see her, I had to agree to do 2 things. First, she gave me a business card with a phone number on it. She said the next time I tried to off myself, I should call that number first. Second, she was going to give me a book to read, and she wanted me to read the first few hundred pages before our next meeting. Before I left that day, she gave me a copy of the big book. I, it took some time, but I eventually made it to my first meeting. I'd gone out on New Year's Eve. When I came to, I thought it was the next morning. As I held my head steady, popped some aspirin, and tried to drink a cup of coffee. I glanced at the front page of the newspaper. It was January 9th, and I had been in a blackout for over a week. After everything to get me to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Oh, sorry, skipped some. After everything else that had happened, that was terrifying enough. To get me to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I drove up to that first meeting, though I saw that the address I had was actually a church. As a new Jewish boy, I was not about to wander into a church. I knew that I would not be welcome. I hid on the floorboards of the car and peeked out the window, waiting for the drunks to walk by. Everyone looked normal, from the for the drunks normal, so I figured I might be in the wrong place. I was about to leave, but then I saw a drinking buddy of mine go in. I jumped out of my car and greeted him. Funny thing, but it was his first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous also. What a coincidence. In we walked into a world that has turned everything in my life inside out. I didn't like AA and the people in it for a long time. I didn't trust anyone, and I got tired of sitting at meetings listening to other newcomers as they began to talk of finding God, having their families return to them, begin treatment or being treated with respect by society, and finding some peace of mind. It never occurred to me that they had sponsors and were working the 12 steps of recovery. I had what I now call a sponsor of the month. I always had a sponsor, but whenever one of them would lovingly suggest I do something, I would fire them and move on to someone else. I remained angry, bitter, and isolated, even though I was going to 5 or 6 AA meetings per week and was not drinking. At 7 months sober, I was getting a little bored with AA and began to wonder if wonder if this was all there was to life. The concept of not drinking again seemed a little extreme, and I thought that perhaps it would be different this time. Then something happened that I now believe helped me to stay sober and find my higher power. I woke up one morning and couldn't feel my legs. I could still walk with with a little difficulty, but it got worse as time passed. Several months and lots of medical examinations, doctors' hospital visits, and tests later, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. The path since then has been quite a journey. I now either walk with crutches or use a wheelchair. There have been lots of times I wanted and intended to drink again. During my second year of sobriety, I slowly became angrier and angrier. I was in what one of my sponsors now refers to as the angry years. I was one of those people we were at meetings and wonder how they stay sober. At my home group, members didn't give up on me. They loved me anyway. One day, the group's general service representative announced she was moving and would have to give up her commitments, and they elected me to her job. They explained to me that a serious 2-year service commitment was exactly what I needed. I tried to explain that I was not eligible, but they told me to go to the monthly general service business meetings and tell them my problems with serving needless to say, they didn't allow me to quit either. Along the way, I learned, in spite of myself, that the best thing about AA service jobs is that for a period of time, I got out of myself. At some point, I began to shut my mouth and actually listen to what other people were saying at meetings. After white knuckling it for almost 2 years in AA, I finally broke down and saw that I could not stay sober all by myself. But I was terrified of going back to drinking. After all my suicide attempts, I had no fear of dying, but I could not stand the idea that I would go back to living that way again. I was at what the old timers and our literature refers to as a jumping off point. I didn't know what to do. One evening, I did the unimaginable, at least for me. After picking up my sponsor of the month to go to a meeting, I informed him that I was ready to work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. In most respects, my life began to again that night. That man looked me through that man took me through the steps in a loving, gentle way that for the remainder of my life I will be grateful for. He taught me to look inward at my soul, to welcome a higher power into my life, and to reach out to others. He taught me how to look into a mirror and to like and even respect the man who looked back at me. When I reached the ninth step, I began to hesitate in my enthusiasm. One morning I woke up covered in sweat and could not get over a nightmare I had. That this was my last day of sobriety. After calling friends and my sponsor, I knew what had to be done. I spent the entire day, more than 8 or 9 hours, going into people's offices and making my amends. Some were thrilled to see me. One woman called the police. When they arrived, it turned out the policeman was in AA, and he convinced the woman not to press charges. I even ran into someone who I had thought was dead. So I took a dead guy to lunch and made my amends to him also. For the first time, I thought and actually felt as if I was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, with something to share at meetings. When I was 4 years sober, I took a trip back to my home city. One of the very few times since I had left so many years before under the threat of jail time. I made amends to the man I had attempted to kill when I was 15 years old. I visited and made amends to several people who had sat at that Thanksgiving dinner table and had watched me attempt suicide in front of them. I came home exhausted but knew that I had somehow done the right thing. It is probably no coincidence that the following year my old friend invited me back for Thanksgiving dinner. AA and the steps of recovery have shown me how to look at events in a different way. I can now understand how some things which once seemed like major disaster turned out to be blessings. Certainly, my alcoholism fits that category. I am truly a grateful alcoholic today. I do not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. Those events that once made me feel ashamed and disgraced now allow me to share with others how to become a useful member of the human race. My physical disability has not altered that attitude. If anything, it has enhanced it. Long ago, I learned that no matter how uncomfortable I was physically, I felt better by getting out of myself and helping someone else. It has also helped to learn how to laugh at myself and to not take myself so seriously. I am aware that I am not the only person on this earth with problems. Through my experience in general service, AA has shown me how widespread and diverse the program is. I've traveled throughout the United States and even went to Israel for several months of a few years ago. While there, I attended meetings and was the second secretary to the meetings located in a bomb shelter. Like everyone else, I have good days and bad days. Unlike my attitude while I was still drinking. However, I rarely dread what is going to happen to me today. I have even had the chance to see my father come into AA. We have been to numerous AA conventions together and have shared more with each other in the past few years than we ever had before. I think we are both at peace with our past and comfortable with the present. In the past several years, I have gone back to school and begun a new career. As I roll around in my wheelchair, I am amazed when I realize that I honestly cannot imagine life to be anything different than what it has been, and that is just fine with me. The tools of sobriety and recovery in AA are there for me to use in all aspects of my life, and all I ever needed is the willingness to do what is in front of me. I am grateful that a drunk like me was fortunate enough to live until I arrived in Alcoholics Anonymous. So, service work is a big thing for us AAs because when we have actually realized that we were given this gift of sobriety, and we realize that we do have what it takes to be sober, we give it back. And I've been to a service board meeting, and I tell you what, that meeting was one of the best places I've ever been. That was so different than being in your home group. I wouldn't mind going back to another one. I just don't know where they are these days. I need to call my sponsor and ask her because she usually knows. But see, what happens for the service board meetings is most of the time, the one that I went to, anyways, I didn't have to stay in a room because I was up on the mountain, and the service board meeting was down at the bottom of the mountain, so it was easy for me to just go and go to the meeting. So what I did was I had my husband drop me off because he was working and I wasn't, and so I got to go and hang out with my sponsor for a full day. We did a lot of walking, a lot of talking. I met so many wonderful people there. And I seen a lot of people that I already knew. But it was just different. It was a different vibe. There was nobody there that didn't understand what we were there for or didn't understand what the newcomers were feeling. Because for me, that was a newcomer situation. Um, I have done a speaker meeting It was for another small group with my group. But I've learned a lot from AA and the ways to use the program and share it and explain how it works leastways for me and my story. Um, so like him, he says it's easier to see now as I look back on my drinking days that from the very beginning, alcohol had been a part of nearly every disaster in my life. AA became, or not AA, but alcohol became a crutch. Something that I could use for every situation. Whether it was good, bad, you name it, it was there. And if it was there, I wanted to be there. Yes, even as a teenager. Unfortunately. But also like him, I didn't get in trouble with the law per se. I did end up in cuffs once. I was a teenager and I was a runaway. And my mom forgot to tell them that I had come back. And so they took me to the jail. I was not booked or anything. They just held me there until my mom got there. Yeah. Um, Anyways, luckily they released me to my mom, even though they probably should not have. It was not. So I was out partying with my friends, and my mom was out partying with hers. So, yeah. But alcohol had been present in my whole life. But also like him, I didn't get to see my father come into AA. I saw him go to one meeting when I was little. I mean, little, when I was still had to go visit him. Um, Before my mom cut it off. My mom's like, nope, no more. You're not going to keep in and out whenever you decide. Anyway, so my father, my birth father, alcoholic. I don't know if he was a drug user or not, but he was an alcoholic, a raging alcoholic. He never stopped. Never stopped. Never admitted his faults. He took him to his grave, wherever that is, if he has one. But it would have been nice to have him sober and realize what he had done to hurt me and my sister. Mind you, my sister and I are his only children. So imagine that phone call. My aunt called me. She's like, well, you asked me to call you when something happened. I was like, oh, he passed away? And that was the only reason why she would have called me. And so I was mixed on how to feel. And I was in AA at this time. I'm still in AA, you guys, so don't think I don't work my steps every day, because I really do. But I got that call, and I didn't know how to feel. But somebody was there, automatic, that I could talk to. There were two people. Oh, no, there was one. Maybe there was two. I think I was talking to Judy at that time, too. Yeah, I was. Anyways, So he passed away, and he never got sober. Something that I had always wanted to see was him get sober. Especially once I started AA, because once I learned that it could work for me, I knew it could work for others. And just like I see now, is me helping others with my story and sharing things that have helped me in those bad days, and just being in the dump about yourself, and thinking about going back out and stuff. Trust me, it's not worth it. I did that before I ever found AA, so I know it's a fact. But it gets easier as time goes on, and you work in your program and doing your steps and living your life with AA and being sober. So he also said, over the next 13 years until I graced the doors of AA for the first time, life really never got any better. I did, however, learn the fine art of geographics, and leaving places that you know, just so you can keep up on the alcohol. Yeah, did that too. And then I realized, wait a minute, now I need to turn this around and do it to get sober. So I did that. Moved to a whole different side of Oregon and got sober. And I thank God every day that I got sober. And now I thank AA and everybody in the rooms and the meetings and here for my meetings. It is a blessing to be able to go and find those things that help with us alcoholics to get sober. Also, he says, I didn't like AA and the people in it for a long time. I didn't trust anyone, and I got tired of sitting at meetings listening to other newcomers as they began to talk of finding God, having their families return to them, being treated with respect by society, and finding some peace of mind. It never occurred to me that they had sponsors and were working the 12 steps. I didn't like AA when I first got there either. I was sober already, but I didn't like AA anyways. And I didn't trust anybody. I didn't even really know I could trust my friend who talked me into going to AA. It didn't take very much convincing, but the first meeting, I didn't think that I would go back. But after I realized, my sponsor gave me my book, my first book, for my first meeting. And she said to read it, just like he was told to do, read it. And so I started reading it. I didn't read very much of it, to tell you the truth. Now I've read it about 15, 20 times. But and you don't know if it's going to work or not from that first meeting, because you don't know how your feelings are going to be and what to think about the rooms and the people in them. I was a newcomer, and I think I was the only newcomer at that meeting. So yeah, I felt out of place. My husband is the one that said my name. I did not. So it was awkward, to say the least. But I didn't know that it would work. And so after that meeting, I called the women's numbers that they gave me at that first meeting. And my sponsor answered. She was the first person that answered her phone. And I wanted to know when the next meeting was. And I went to that meeting. And, I'd go to the meeting and then I'd leave early. Because I still felt out of place. Even though it was somewhere I needed to be. But until I was able to actually listen to what they were trying to tell me, and having a sponsor telling me you need to do your steps. She wasn't mean or ornery about it, but she did remind me quite often. You doing your steps? How about step 4? Because step 4 was the worst one for me. I don't know why, but it was the worst one. I could not for the life of me get those out on the paper. She kept on me. She's like, you need to do your step 4. Can't go on until you do your step 4. I was so irritated. But, I'd write some things down and then I'd just stop writing. I was like, whatever. And finally, I finished it. And I actually had to sit by myself and tone everything else out to write down what I needed to write down. And I cried while I was doing it. But I did. And so then eventually I was talking to her and I was trying to figure out how I know what I needed to make my amends for. Or what ones were things I needed to make amends for anyways. And so I did those, the ones I could. But when it came to my father, I couldn't. I didn't know where he was. Really, I didn't care. And so I asked her about those, and she told me that was not something for me to make amends for. And so after that, I decided to ask her about how do I get rid of them? What do I do? And I was like, maybe I could burn them. And so I asked her about it. I'm like, you think I should burn it? She's like, any way you want. Yes. And so I did. I'm not going to forget what happened. But I can't keep holding it. And that's why I burnt it. And so it doesn't make me mad anymore. It doesn't make me cry anymore. It's just there in my mind, Not all the time. But AA's taught me how to get over those hurdles of those weird awkward feelings. And so it works. And having a sponsor is a definite yes. It doesn't matter how many you go through until you find the right one. I've had two at the same time, and they both helped me in different ways. And when Judy passed, I just decided that I'm going to stay with my sponsor I have now. And so I'm blessed to have a sponsor as great as her to keep me grounded and going forward, working my program every day, making sure that I work my steps. And so just know if you're struggling with addiction or alcoholism, please know you're not alone. There's meetings absolutely everywhere, and if you don't know where to look up churches or go to a church and see if they have meetings. And if you got two people, make your own meeting. I've had to do that before, and that's why I started this here, is so I could reach the ones that can't get out and go to a meeting. And I just know that there's help out there everywhere. Like my sponsor said last week, even on ships. So, but with that, you got this. Even if it's day one, keep going. It's easier, and it's very much worth it. So, I love you guys, and be safe out there. Stay sober. And let's say the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Love you guys.